Let's do the one breath meditation. Just really pay attention to one breath. All right, let's read some Emily Dickinson. The poems that, all the poems that I wanted to do today are, none of them are in the book we've been using. So I put them on my screen. Okay, everyone seeing some text?
Hello, the truth.
Yes. Okay. So, by the way, there is an option. There's an option in the side-by-side option in the screen sharing thing, so you could see the text on half of the page and me on half of the page, if you like. I'm going to go back here and, oh yeah. Let's see if anyone else joined us. Cynthia, you made it. Hi, Cynthia. Are you all hearing me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, Cynthia, glad you made it. Sorry, that was my mistake. That's why there's just a few of us here today. Okay, so all the poems I wanted to do by Emily Dickinson today are not in the book, so I put them up on the screen here. And you can find all of these online. This is a quote from her, from one of her letters, I believe. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. Okay, so we're you know, she's committed to apprehending all of reality and expressing all of reality, having all of it come through her poetry. But you don't do it directly. You don't do it, as we'll see. There's something about approaching the truth, expressing the truth in a little bit more oblique way, which has a certain power. Also, that word slant has a technical meaning in poetry, what's called slant rhyme, which is where two words almost rhyme. For example, here's one you may remember from high school. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. So pearl and alcohol is an example of what's called slant rhyme. And in the very few instances when any of Emily Dickinson's poetry was published during her lifetime, they looked at that stuff and they said, wait, she doesn't know what she's doing. We got to help her. That poor dear couldn't figure out how to make these words rhyme exactly. Let's fix them up. And they put something else at the end of the last line. I forget what it is to make it rhyme with pearl. No, she meant to do that. She was telling it slant. Can you feel what happens when words almost rhyme? Can you feel what it does to you? You know, what happens when words rhyme? Why do people love rhyme? It gives a feeling of, oh yeah, everything's tidy. Everything's figured out. That's why politicians use it. right? For political slogans, or even there's even been examples of it in court. And remember the O.J. Simpson trial: if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. Right? And you figure, well, it rhymes, it must be true. Because when you hear two words rhyme and they're delivered in a proper meter, a proper rhythm, that you get a little squirt of what do you call them? The little feel good hormones. We associate a feeling of good, a little feeling of with that. Must be true. It's used in advertising. Winston tastes good like a cigarette should. Right? Actually, Winston's taste like crap, but it rhymes, so it must be true. Right? So here she's taken that on. No, I'm not going to give you easy resolution. I'm not going to give you a reality that's tied up in a nice, neat little girly, as a matter of fact, little girly pink bow. I'm tougher than that. I'm going to be more challenging than that. Okay? Tell the truth, but tell it slant. Tell all the truth, but tell it slant. So let's look at this one. I taste a liquor never brewed, from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, I shall but drink the more, till seraphs swing their snowy hats and saints to windows run to see the little tippler leaning against the sun. Okay? So here's Emily Dickinson writing about booze. And part of the context here is that in her time, in the 19th century, this was the time of the rise of the temperance movement. There was an epidemic of alcoholism in this country. Part of it had to do with economics. People were were growing a lot of corn, and they started realizing they had too much corn to turn it into to sell as food, and it cost too much to transport all that corn. But if they realized that if they distilled it into liquor, then it was more it worked better economically. So they had to get all these people. The what we call the coffee break. That was originally I forget what they call it, but it was the booze break. Wow. It was the booze break, and part of the temperance movement of the 19th century was to replace the booze break. They said, well, people want that social thing. They want something to pour down their mouths. Let's get them drinking coffee instead, something to perk them up instead of making them stupider. So the temperance movement, the anti-drinking, that was a big thing, and they had big revival meetings, and people would take the pledge and so forth. So partly she's playing on that, but she's talking about, she's kind of using the language of, they would, at their meetings, they would have someone come up and give his testimony. There's like the forerunner of the 12 steps. Hi, I'm Dean, I'm an alcoholic. And then, you tell your whole story. So she's telling her story of herself as a big drinker, but she's not apologizing. And it's a special kind of drink. I taste a liquor never brewed. Let me go back to the screen. How can you taste a liquor never brewed? You notice that's a contradiction?
Well, you feel it.
You feel it. You have to. Yeah, it's got to be. I mean, that's some other kind of liquor. If it's not brewed, it's not physical liquor. It's something else. It's metaphysical liquor. It's some kind of higher intoxication. This is very familiar to us who are astronauts of inner space. And the structure of it, I taste a liquor never brewed. It's a paradox. It's like saying, what's the sound of one hand clapping? It's a koan, right? It's a koan. It's an absolute contradiction there for us to contemplate. How can we taste a liquor never brewed? And if we stay in the kind of the horizontal level of the usual logic of our lives, that makes no sense. If you don't brew it, you don't get liquor. So that forces us to go to a higher level, to find where the paradox is resolved. Just like to find how the sound of one hand clapping, we have to go to the higher level to find the sound of the silence. Again, the sound of silence is very familiar to those of us who've been doing meditation for a while. So here's another phrase for the same thing. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Right? It's beautiful, it's precious, it's celestial. She's trying to convey, I think, what is that experience? What is that samadhi, that satori experience that she was marinating in? What's it like? There's no way to convey it directly. You have to convey it slant. She's telling all the truth. She's telling the highest thing she knows, but she has to tell it slant. Use these figures of speech. It's, if you look at at pearl, the luminosity of pearl, that gives you some sense of the feeling of that. Not all the Frankfurt berries, right? Frankfurt in Germany, where they were, famous for brewing beer. Not all the Frankfurt berries yield such an alcohol. Right, so this is a higher brew than any physical berries can produce. Inebriate, of course means drunkard, and debauchee, this word debauched, it means just completely decadent. You're just totally orgied out, right? Inebriate of air am I, and debauchee of dew. Right? I'm getting high on the air. I'm orgying with the dewdrops. Wow. And that's what she would do. She would walk through nature, walk through the woods. No one read her poetry during her life, but they knew she was a great gardener. She was hanging out there in the garden, getting high on the air and the dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. So the inns, of course, are the taverns. But what tavern does she go to? It's the sky, the blue, but it's molten. When you're out there in nature and your brains are melting into samadhi, they're merging with the sky. Your brain's melting into the sky is melting into your brain. Inns of molten blue. When landlords means that was the term in those days for the bartender. And a foxglove is a particular flower. When landlords turn the drunken bee out of the foxglove's door, right? Okay, hey, bartender, 86 that bee, he's had enough. Right? So, and then when butterflies renounce their drams, so she's out there in the garden with the bees and the butterflies, and the drams means, their drinks. So the butterflies are giving it up. The butterflies are there face down on the barroom floor saying, oh, no, I'm never going to drink again. The bees gotten kicked out. Everyone has reached the end of their drinking capacity. But there's Emily drinking them all under the table. I shall but drink them more. In the Hindu tradition, this celestial intoxicant was called soma. And there's all these hymns of the Vedas the most ancient texts of Hinduism, all about soma and how making the soma and drinking the soma and offering it up to the gods. And there's all these theories about what soma actually was. There's some lines there that some people interpret as that soma was, psychedelic mushrooms or something. And other people interpret it as, no, they're describing the processes that happen in the body, the changes that happen in your body chemistry over the long term of meditation that just, converts your body chemistry so that you can maintain samadhi all the time, which of course we're incrementally experiencing ourselves doing. So I shall but drink the more till seraphs of course are angels, till seraphs swing their snowy hats and saints to windows run. Right? What a wonderful image it is. All the saints running to the window. Oh, you got to see this. You got to see this. What do they want to see? To see the little tippler, right? The little drinker. That's her. She was tiny. She's this tiny little girl drinking everyone under the table. To see the little tippler leaning. And what do you normally see a tippler leaning against? The wall or the lamppost. But in this case, to see the little tippler leaning against the sun. Wow.
Really great.
Isn't that great? That's just... By the way, thank you all so much, because I never really got this poem before. I never really understood it till just now on the, being thrown into the situation, reading it out loud. Let me see what's going on here. Oh, there it is. Wow, it's fantastic.
She's talking about the connection that she has with the universe itself.
Yeah.
Everything is connected.
Yeah. But what she's doing is conveying the experience.
Correct.
It's not giving us a message. It's not saying, quote, everything in the universe is connected. The thing that I always hated the most about being an English teacher in school for all those years is that you get kids saying, so I think what she's trying to say here is, what is the poet trying to say? As if the poet is this poor tongue-tied creature that is just waiting for us to help poor little stammering Emily, spit it out. Everything in the universe is connected, as if it all boils down to something you could put in a fortune cookie, right? If you could do that, if you could boil it down to something, you wouldn't need the poem, right? But the poem is about conveying the experience. It's conveying the experience of getting high on existence, which is of course what we're all doing. We're all the little tipplers here. This is our project. This is our life.
True.
Okay. Good. Let's do another one. Okay. Now this one was very controversial. I think I mentioned last time that when Dickinson died, they found in the drawer in her bedroom there all these little tiny pieces of paper with poems on them. She'd get a stack of them and then stab it twice, make 2 holes in it, and to make these tiny little booklets a couple of inches in each direction, and tie it together with ribbon. Ultimately, they found, I think, 1,775 poems. But there wound up being these fights over different people who thought they had custody of the poems, and to get them published in good order and in good shape without people trying to correct her rhymes and her spelling and her punctuation took well into the 20th century. And this one in particular was suppressed because you know, she was unmarried. Uh, she had over the years, there were a few different older gentlemen that she had correspondence with, that she had these maybe intellectual, spiritual, platonic friendships with, and in at least one or two cases seemed to have, you know, giant romantic crushes on them. And so this one would really scared people. They said they kept this one out of her published poetry for some decades. Wild nights were I with thee. Wild nights should be our luxury. Futile the winds to a heart in port, done with the compass, done with the chart. Rowing in Eden, ah, the sea, might I but moor tonight in thee. Okay, now you can see if we take this romantic, erotically, this is very hot stuff. This is very hot stuff. This is wild nights. Were I with thee? In other words, if only I were with you, we would have wild nights. That would be our luxury. The second stanza, the second half, done with the compass, done with the chart. You know, chart means in seafaring, the chart means the map. So we're done with with navigation. We're done with trying to get anywhere. We're here, right? Futile the winds to a heart in port. Once you're in port, once you're home, once you're where you want to be, once you're lying in the arms of your love, you don't need to sail anymore. You don't need any more winds. You're in the port. Rowing, and by the way, notice the slant rhyme there, port and chart. Rowing in Eden, ah, the sea, might I but moor tonight in thee. Interesting. I mean, as an erotic poem, this actually works better if it's the male addressing the female, right? I want to moor in thee. You know, moor is when you drop anchor, when you, okay, this is where my boat's going to stop. You know, I want to be inside you, it's saying. Right? I love this, rowing in Eden. Once you're in Eden, there's nowhere to go. You're in the garden of paradise. Right? But we're still rowing. There's still some movement to enjoy being in there, as it were. So as an erotic poem, this is about as hot as things get. But what if we read it another way?
This is not an erotic poem at all.
Well, I'm you know, great literature can work on a lot of different levels. And I think you're right. On one level, it's not erotic at all. And in that case, it all hinges on the word thee. Who is thee?
God.
If it's God, then look at what happens. Yeah. Wild nights were I with thee. You know, if only the apparent distance between me and the infinite, between me and God, if only that illusory sense of separateness would drop away, right? Futile, and you can see how this, you futile the winds to a heart in port, done with the compass, done with the chart. We don't have to navigate anymore. We've been seekers. We've been spiritual seekers. Which way is God? Let me get out my compass. Which way is God? Let me consult the chart, the map, and you know the hold on. Loud airplane going overhead. You know, which way is God? Well, let me consult the chart. Let me consult the compass. But once you're there, once you realize, wait, the infinite's right here. I'm in port. I don't need any wind. We're not seekers. We're not. And of course, this is also telling us how to meditate. Don't do anything. You're in port. You're always already there. You know, And also, you know, compass and chart is like, okay, finding direction. It's figuring things out. It's the rational mind. This is, you know, in the wildness, and this is the thing that happens when you're drunk, and this is the thing that happens when you're having a wild romp in bed with someone. All, you know, logic and thinking and calculus all goes out the door. Things get wild. Right? Rowing in Eden. Eden is you know, this that makes more sense if this is, you know, not an erotic poem, if it's a spiritual poem, or, you know, Eden is pre-sexual, is the original innocence. Rowing in Eden, ah, the sea, might I but moor tonight in thee. Right?
What was that?
Ah, Tova,
Sorry.
you're
Sorry.
here. Yeah. I hear the voice of an angel, and it's Tova. Yeah, Tova, I'm sorry I screwed up the link somehow this time, but you found us, and so you can get the.
Jatsna wasn't able to connect either,
Yeah.
but
Okay.
that's okay. Next time.
Yeah, and I'll be posting this. I'll be posting this on the YouTube channel so you can see the beginning of it. Okay.
Which, by the way, whose poem is this?
These are all Emily Dickinson.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else about that one? It's pretty great.
So great.
It's pretty great.
Yes.
Okay, let's do another. Oh, yeah. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. Don't tell. They'd advertise, you know. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, to tell one's name the livelong June to an admiring bog. I'm nobody. Who are you? How many people want to be nobody? How many people do you know that aspire? Yeah, well, everyone here, this is what's called a biased sample, right? But of the people that you know beyond this little, beyond the perimeter of this screen here, right? Almost everyone you know is working really hard to be somebody, right? I want to be somebody. I want to see my name up on the plaque. I want to see, right? I want to be the coolest kid. I want to be the smartest, the best looking, the, you know, like the wicked queen in Snow White, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all, right? We all want to send, we all want to be a special somebody, right? We want to be the best, the fairest, the smartest. But in order to be a special somebody, first you have to be somebody. And to be somebody, once you're somebody, you're screwed. Because once you're somebody, it means you're a finite being. You're stuck being an ego. You're stuck being a chunk of something, right? Once you're somebody, you're this buddy, you're not any of the other buddies. You're limited. And then, of course, the moment you've taken on those limitations, you have to start fighting against them, trying to expand them by trying to be the best somebody, the biggest, the richest. You build your fucking towers, you know, taller than everybody else's. Get elected president. That'll do it. Oh, yeah, this, right? And it never does it. You know, we got this guy now who is such a superb example, right, of what doesn't work. Of what doesn't work, you know, and the frustration of it. The frustration of it. You know, what more profoundly unhappy person is there? It's a losing game. Now we have to go through. We have to. We start off. We come into the world as nobody. Everything's just kind of a blur, and you're lying there in the crib, and everyone goes, "Oh, little Tova, Kuchiku, Tova, little Tova, you're so cute. And after a while, you start to think, well, I guess I must be this Tova thing that those big authoritative voices keep talking about. So we become somebody, and that's not a mistake. We have to do that. That's part of our adventure in this world. You know, the old cliche where what is it? We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. We came to this planet to experience being human, to be somebody. But if that's as far as you go, you've only seen the first half of the movie. Then the second half of the movie is where you start reaching the outer limits of the fulfillment of being somebody, and you go, well, what more is there? And it turns out that what's more is less, is to be nobody. Right? Now, another one of the things that I always hated as an English teacher was students, and it's not just students, it's not their fault. A lot of teachers will do this, and a lot of sometimes literary critics will do this, which is to reduce the work of art to the artist's biography. Right? You know, like whatever, like Tova, you know, those beautiful songs by Leonard Cohen. You say, oh, okay, there's all this going on because this was happening in Leonard Cohen's life at that time. And of course, there's some validity to that. But what makes an artist a great artist is when they create this thing, it comes through them and it's bigger than the artist. Mm-hmm. It's bigger than the artist. You know, and that's why the last person you should ever ask about, you know, what a work means, what it's about, never ask the artist. It's like asking the chicken about the mineral content of the egg that it's laid. Right? They're too busy laying the egg. They don't know what's happening. It's just this thing that comes through them. Right? And if you've ever painted, danced, written, you know that when the real stuff happens, it's just, wow, where the hell did that come from? All right. So in this case, people try to reduce it to, oh, Emily Dickinson was a recluse, right? And she, you know, starting from the age of, I think, 30 something, she stopped going outside. She started only wearing white. No one ever saw her. She just became the whispered about, you know, town eccentric. But we, you know, if that's all it was, then her stuff wouldn't be interesting to us. We're not interested in studying the mid-19th century town eccentric from Amherst, Mass. That's of limited interest. But what's interesting is the discovery that we make in meditation, and eventually we're making the discovery all the time, that we're nobody. This is what in Buddhist terms is called anatta. The doctrine of anatta, A-N-A-T-T-A. I know some of you are familiar with that, A-N-A-T-T-A. Which literally means nobody, literally means no self. The doctrine of no self. That there isn't a little monkey in the skull behind the eyelids, behind the eyeballs, you know, gripping the steering wheel. There's no one in there. There's just boundlessness. Boundless awareness, boundless beingness. And I love the fact that in Buddhism, that understanding is called no self, anatta, and in Hindu philosophy, it's called Atman, the self, like self with a capital S. Yeah. Completely contradictory terms, which just shows us that the words are inadequate. You know, when you've had the experience of it, as you know, everyone here has had that experience with, you know, more or less clarity. We know, okay, I could see someone could call this being no self, and I could see someone could call this being the true self, the capital S self. Mm-hmm. So she's going the no self route. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? What's the answer to that question? Are you nobody too? Or am I the only one? Of course you're nobody too. Everyone's nobody too. But pretty exciting to discover you're not the only one. You know, when if you start making this discovery about yourself, and if you start making this discovery about yourself, and you don't have the advantage of, you know, in Dharma texts and Dharma teachers and so forth, as she did not have, you might think you're going crazy. Everyone else seems to think they're somebody. Everyone else, you know, am I nuts here? And I've known of people who, you know, they meditated for a while. One guy in particular woke up in the middle of the night, said to his wife, "God, I feel strange. I think," and he actually had the phone in his hand. He was going to call the doctor. And then he started going over, you know, the words of his teacher, and realized, oh no, this is not illness. This is enlightenment. There's no one home. The lights are on, but there's no one home. Thank God. So it's lovely to discover someone else. This is the power of Sangha, right? We get reinforcement. We get confirmation. Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us, right? What a lovely relationship. And you see that's the basis for the best possible relationship. If you have two people trying to be somebody, that's not a good basis for a marriage, a partnership, anything else. Because if you've got two somebodies, they've got boundaries. Their boundaries are always going to be colliding. If you've got nobodies, a pair of nobodies, they don't have boundaries. It's going to be, there was a, when I was a kid, I had this book called, I think, The World We Live In. It was from Life magazine or Time Life or something. And it had all these great pictures of the forests and the dinosaurs and the universe and all that. When I was 6, 7, 8 years old, this book was very fascinating to me. And there was one picture that really fascinated me of two galaxies colliding, right? One galaxy just passing through the other. And the caption of the picture explained that even though this galaxy contains billions of stars and this galaxy contains billions of stars, and they take however many million years to pass through each other, no two stars will collide because the internal spaces within the galaxies are so vast. Isn't that great? Isn't that great? So this is the relationship of two nobodies. Right? When you're both just open space, that's what it's like. That's what it's like. That's fun. That's fun. And so you know what reading a poem like this does is helps us be on the lookout for this stuff. To notice crazy psycho people in the street. Are you hearing that?
Yes.
Yeah. Another crazy psycho person. Two of them.
Are you safe?
Yeah. We got. I just closed my door and we got a gate, a high gate there. But yeah, there's a lot of people doing a lot of suffering.
There being somebody.
There, yeah. And you know what? Thank you. That's the ultimate. That's the ultimate extreme of being somebody. You either become you know, a homeless raving lunatic, or you become president. Right? You know, there's all the way. I'm somebody. I got to be this. I got to be that. You're given. I'm not able to fulfill that thing. It must be your fault. You know, same patterns. Same thing. Same thing. Let's go back to that. I'm nobody. Who are you? Are you nobody too? Then there's a pair of us. So there's something jolly about that. There is, nice. Don't tell, right? Shh, don't tell. They'd advertise, right? Don't tell, right? This is where Jesus says, "Don't cast your pearls before swine." Right? That when you and I don't know if you've experienced that. When I actually, as a kid, I started having some of these kind of opening experiences spontaneously, way before I ever heard of meditation or Dharma or anything. And you probably did too. I think most people do as children, but then most people forget about it. We're the people who didn't forget about it. We're the people who said, "I want more of that." But I don't know. Tell me if you had the same impulse. My impulse was, for instance, the experience I had on and off for some years is the way I experienced it was, I don't have a face. I don't have, like everyone else is like we're closed in front, like there was a seam in front, as if they were zipped or sewn closed in front, but somehow I'd been left open.
Interesting.
Right? That's how, if I had to describe it at the time, I would have described it. And of course, that was some experience of some flavor, some aspect of boundlessness, of that opening. Right? Sometimes people describe it. Emily Dickinson, by the way, wrote in a letter to someone when she was talking about poetry. And she said, "I know it's poetry when it takes the top of my head off." Right? How great is that? How great is that? We've all experienced that, having the top of your head taken off, right? That's the crown chakra opening up. You're melting into the sky. And I'm not sure if you've exactly had that experience, but I know some of you have. So it might feel like that. It might feel like this. When you're completely cooked, it's not like this. It's not like this. It's not like anything. Right. But when we're first kind of transitioning, coming from the sense of, oh, I'm just this finite thing, this ego sewn into a bag of skin and it's closed here at the face. Oh, I'm open at the face. But what I felt was everyone else was closed. Everyone else had a face. But I kept feeling puzzled that they thought I was like them. Like they keep just treating me as if I have a face like everyone else, which didn't make sense to me. Right? It's like, can't they see this thing's wide open? Now, of course, if my insight had been more profound, I would have realized that, oh, none of them had faces either. Right? Right? That's you're nobody too. Right, but I wasn't that advanced. But what I was starting to say is that I never told anyone about that at the time, and it wasn't that, oh, I felt shameful, or I just something in me just knew it. It almost like didn't occur to me. Don't talk about this.
Right.
Yeah. And in particular, again, if you're living in a world as Emily did, where isn't a lot of understanding of this stuff, they will lock you up.
She locked herself up.
Yeah, that's right. She locked herself up, but she was wise enough to lock herself up to pursue the thing further.
Right. Yeah.
By the way, you'll often see this one printed with the fourth line of the first stanza. Don't tell, they banish us, They banish us, exactly the opposite of what we have here. And it may be, I'm not sure of the exact history of this, but in some cases, she scribbled her poems on the back. So she actually took old envelopes and opened them up and wrote poems on the insides of envelopes, on the backs of recipes, and often she'd do all these scrawls and cross-outs, and have a few different versions of what word should go where, and it wasn't always exactly clear what her final version was, even if she'd arrived at a final version. But for years I always saw this printed as they'd banish us, but this makes much more sense.
Right.
You wouldn't, if you're nobody, you don't mind being banished. She had, as someone just said, she'd banished herself. But what's worse, the bad fate is they'd advertise, ladies and gentlemen, presenting nobody. Yay. There's actually an old joke, there's an old Dharma joke. One day in shul, in temple, the rabbi comes running through the door, throws himself down on the floor, beats his breast, looks up, he says, "I'm nobody, Lord, I'm nobody." So the cantor sees that. So the cantor throws himself down on the floor, beats his breast, says, "I'm nobody, Lord, I'm nobody." And then the president of the congregation sees what's going on, figures he'll get in on the action. He flings himself on the floor. "I'm nobody, Lord, I'm..." Meanwhile, the janitor is in the back with the mop. There's a name for that, for the special name for the janitor, the custodian. Anyone know what that is? What is it, Tova?
No, there is Gabbai, which is the helper near the Torah. But
Yeah. Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. So for the janitor sees the rabbi, the cantor, the president of the congregation, nobody, and he goes, "Hey, okay," and he puts his mop down and pushes his bucket out of the way, and he walks over and he throws himself down on the floor. He goes, "I'm nobody, Lord, I'm nobody." So the rabbi looks over at the cantor and the president of the congregation. They look at the janitor, and the rabbi goes, "Look who thinks he's nobody." Right? So this is spiritual ego. This is, I'm the most selfless guy here, right?
But I think when she says they will advertise us, she doesn't say they will advertise me as a nobody. She's afraid they will advertise her as Miss Beauty Queen or Miss Smarty Pants.
Yeah, maybe, except that look what comes just before it. Don't tell, right? In other words, don't tell anyone that we're nobody, because then they would advertise, So you don't want, see, once you tell people you're nobody, then that becomes public. And then actually that's what we get in the second stanza. How dreary to be somebody. How public, like a frog, right? And of course, we know what frogs do all through the summer, right? Ribbit, rabbit, rabbit. How public, like a frog, to tell one's name the livelong June to an admiring bog, right? It's so dreary to, once you take on being somebody, once it's, "I'm Emily Dickinson, the poet. I'm Dean Slider, the writer, the teacher," whatever, then you're stuck with it. Then you gotta, the publisher of my last book told me, "Oh, you got to get on Instagram, Dean. You got to keep posting stuff on Instagram. That's the only way to sell books and share your life." And, I started the Instagram account and I put about 5 pictures on there. And I went, "God, I can't do this. I don't want to do this. Be busy being Dean." This whole thing's about getting out of that.
Good point.
When she's cutting, boy, no one's better. Great. Okay, you want to be somebody? Go ahead. Just keep croaking your name over and over like a frog. And if you do it enough times, you'll get the admiration of the entire bog, right? The whole swamp full of mud will be you'll be the lord of all you survey, and all you survey will be mud. That's fantastic. and it's just it makes that case for nobodiness so right, so powerfully and clearly and comically and cuttingly that, can you see, it makes it a little harder to go back to your efforts of being somebody? You know, your meditation, your Dharma practice is going to slowly pull the rug out from under it, but this gives it a good yank. You know?
It really does.
Yeah. Okay, we've gone over time. Sorry we started late, but so let me see what else I wanted to talk about. Wild nights. I felt the funeral. Okay, let's do one more. We'll do one more Sunday on Emily Dickinson. I'll get the link stuff straightened out. I apologize to everyone. I'll send out a note, and I'll get this thing posted.